Chapter 5 Freaks of Nature. When one disrupts the natural flow of nature, her wrath will be felt.
There's a rare zoological museum that sits in Michigan, right off the Detroit River.
It is beautifully, architecturally structured, and its interior is as rare as its exterior.
The window panes have colorful, distinctive images of animals that are found in various countries all over the world, many of which are collected and housed inside for exhibition in numerous forms, such as skeletal, taxidermy, fluid preserved, and some even living.
Thousands of tourists enter the doors annually to get a glimpse of the rarely, and some even never before seen unusual creatures.
The museum's zoologist, chief explorer, and his team travel to the peaks of the highest mountains, the bottom of the lowest valleys, the deepest of the darkest caves, the most extreme, bitter, wintry, freezing cold, and scorching hot climates in search of rare animal life to bring back to the zoological museum for display, as well as collect some of the surrounding habitation to replicate the environment.
Easel's next journey has taken him to the thick, dangerous but dazzling jungles of Africa. Easel is sure he will find a rare creature in the African brush if he goes in deeper than no other has gone before.
As he is dropped off in the middle of the jungle by a small aircraft and pilot funded by the museum, he navigates through the tropical jungle by passing different creatures that have already been identified seeking a real find.
He begins to trek further into the thick, green jungle, camping out in camouflage with his camping backpack filled with just the essentials needed to get him by for the next few weeks he is prepared to spend there if necessary.
As night falls, he lightly sleeps and patiently awaits the break of dawn each day to continue his journey until he can discover something he can photograph and take back in order to bring the team with him to later capture, or for a find he can capture himself with the apparatus he keeps in his backpack.
His patience pays off. He comes across his first glimpse of an unidentified species. It looks to be an enormous bird, but upon further observation, as he creeps cautiously closer peering through his binoculars, it turns out to be a monkey with wings spanning 20 feet wide, flying limb to limb throughout the massive jungle trees. Easel's eyes open as wide as the sky, he is frozen solid in disbelief, shock, and fear at what he identifies as a winged monkey. He was prepared to find a rare species, but not an impossible creature. He runs as fast as his legs will carry him, tripping several times along the way until he gets to the designated lift-off spot where he radioed his pilot to meet him. As they fly out of the jungle, the pilot drops him off below as instructed.
Easel finds his way to the nearest remote village by following the voices and sounds of human life he hears. He then comes across native village people who do not live far from the jungle. They have frequently heard of him and his finds, but thought he was psychotic for going so deep into the jungle. They also believed most of it was all a hoax that he and the museum curators were manipulating and conspiring to fool people in order to turn a profit and build a reputation for themselves and their museum. He frantically describes the species he has just witnessed to the small group of villagers he saw gathered nearby in the best version of their native dialect that he could speak. They expressed amusement, but laugh in disbelief, telling him how foolish he sounds. He then catches a ride in a rusty muddy jeep passing by to the scientific college lab he visited a few times before, which sat in a small town several miles away from the outskirts of the jungle, to inquire about the biological possibility of what he witnessed.
The professor and lead scientist, Dr. Sycamore, explains to Easel condescendingly how humans and animals are more alike than they are different, and if some humans have the desire to mate outside of their race and gender, why can't some animals do so outside of their species?
Dr. Sycamore shared top-secret research with Easel since he was a fellow colleague in the professional science field that detailed how the animal kingdom has been witnessed by very few mating with opposite species, and how it's so uncommon that the scientific community and society as a whole would never accept it without proof. He then cited what he considered the perfect examples of how the mule is the offspring of a male donkey and female horse, as well as the liger being the offspring of a male lion and female tiger. Dr. Sycamore went on saying how it was bound to happen with other species sooner or later and how he does not understand why he's so baffled and amused by it. Before leaving the college laboratory, Easel asked Dr. Sycamore if he could work with him to capture and study the unidentified mutants. Easel was astounded when the scientist with the genius research reputation of being one of the best in the world would decline such an offer to join him for the study of an unfamiliar creature that could possibly catapult both of their careers and the sciences even further, but thought no more of the declined collaboration. Nevertheless, Easel left the college laboratory with the reputable scientist to get back to his work and to leave Dr. Sycamore to his. He then rested for the evening and went back into the jungle at the crack of dawn to attempt to capture the winged monkey for the Zoological Museum in the States with the collapsible cage apparatus he kept in his backpack, or at the very least obtain photos of the creature for the world to see, not only a rare species, but a new modern mammal mutation. He in addition wanted to see if one of the scientists or zoologists he knew in the United States would work with him to study the cause of origin of the mutation.
Easel searched desperately day after day for the mysterious creature to no avail.
After weeks of camping in the jungle, fighting off countless annoying and blood-sucking insects, avoiding deadly run-ins with wild animals, enduring inclement weather and uncomfortable conditions, Easel was on the verge of giving up on the possibility of ever seeing the creature again, and even began thinking maybe he did imagine it like the Africans he saw gathered when he made his way out of the jungle stated he did, due to his fatigue and overexcitement of a possible new find. Just as he started to give up the search, head back to civilization and signal for his pilot to pick him up in the small aircraft to travel back to the States with disappointment of no new find to bring back, he began hearing animal sounds like he had never heard in his extensive career as a chief zoological explorer.
It was a combination of monkey sounds and strange bird calls simultaneously, ooh 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 ee 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 ah ah, mixed with loud chirps and many other animal sounds he never heard before. He followed stiffly with his eyes and ears the direction of the sounds. He began to see with amazement a host of the other mutants all throughout the thick-leaf jungle.
No longer frozen in fear of the crossbreeds, he was now in awe and astonishment of them, but yet still baffled by the mystifying change in nature.
Easel lifted his camera from his neck, zoomed in and began snapping pictures profusely of the twisted creatures. He was not equipped, nor did he come with the manpower to physically capture all the animals, and was unsure of his safety with approaching them. Therefore, Easel took the photos he snapped back to Dr. Sycamore, who gave a long pause after viewing the images and calmly stated that no one would believe the pictures are authentic and would just accuse him of photoshopping the images. The mastermind scientist then cautioned Easel to not go back into the jungle, or he may not make it back out alive, and to leave the creatures be. He also snaringly told Easel, "I informed you of the possibility of this," and went on with his other lab work. The chief explorer just blamed the lack of excitement and nonchalant response of the longtime scientist as aging and losing the love and curiosity he once had for science and research during his prime.
Easel took the photos back to Michigan and showed them to the curator at the Zoological Museum, who refused to print and hang what he considered bogus photos.
The curator accused Easel of doctoring the images due to him being unable to secure another rare find, and stated he refused to hang phony photos down the halls of the highly regarded museum walls.
Easel was devastated that he was thought of as being dishonest after such a long reputable career with the museum. Easel looked the curator directly in the eyes and asked, "Have you ever known my work to have a lack of credibility for the 22 years I've been in this field, or the time I've been with this museum?"
The curator turned away as he mumbled, "Desperate times sometimes call for desperate measures." He walked away hurt and disappointed, but did not give up. He went to other museums to see if they would test the legitimacy of the photos and give him an opportunity to display his work.
He even offered them to send someone with him. However, they were not willing to spend their resources or risk their reputation on what they thought of as fraud.
He was turned down by all of the others as well.
Easel saw no other way but to go back to Africa with his own assistants to try and capture a few of the animals.
One of the assistants were skeptical, but curious. The other believed and trusted in Easel because he knew of the chief explorer's long history of work and impeccable reputation.
The men headed back to the African jungle armed with needles, tranquilizers, collapsible wheeled cages, huge bags, and net guns.
The three-man team were prepared to fight their way through the thick brush in the middle of the jungle with machetes to camp out for as long as it took to capture the offspring of the crossbred creatures.
Dr. Sycamore learned of his planned return the day before he was to be there and informed the armed Africans he hired to let him know if Easel's aircraft is spotted trying to land. Dr. Sycamore paid the gunmen to cease any attempts of Easel to go into their jungle and went on and on about how those arrogant Americans always think they can go anywhere they want and have anything they please.
After Easel and his assistants touched down and began treading through the jungle, they noticed they were being followed and camouflaged themselves night after night until the African gunmen turned around, refusing to go further into the thick, mysterious, dangerous jungle, especially after hearing rumors of the modern mutants and of people who went deep in and never came back out.
The African gunmen falsely reported back to Dr. Sycamore that they did not see Ezel and his crew going into the jungle. Ezel led the men back to the location where the mutants were after they noticed they were no longer being trailed.
He discreetly stuck tiny brown and green tacks at the base of certain trees to help him remember his way through the remote location and use colors that would blend in with the forest so no one else could follow his path.
They finally arrived to the animals' enclave. He and his crew saw elephants, giraffes with elephants' bodies, snats, snake heads and torso with rat tail ends, winged monkeys, frizzards, frogs with lizard heads, zions, lions with zebra stripes, and arzels, aardvarks with heads of gazelles.
The man tranquilized the adult mammals and captured the infant of each creature to take back to the States.
They made it out of the jungle undetected and back on the aircraft they had waiting tucked away and camouflaged. After throwing the huge jungle leaves off the plane they used to conceal it, they headed back to the United States with the offspring of the crossbred creatures. On their way back, they surmised many hypothetical theories of how the animals came into existence and stared unbelievably at every single detail of each one. Ezel then headed back to the zoological museum he works for with the small mutants, some of which did not survive the trip, but were still preserved.
The curator was in disbelief and offered Ezel an apology as well as top dollar for the animals, an amount he has not received his entire career at the museum or as a chief zoologist at any museum for that matter.
Word eventually got out and the zoological museum's popularity increased 1,000-fold. Other museums wanted in on the frenzy. People from all over the world traveled in to get a glimpse of the unbelievable freaks of nature.
All of the previous places and people who doubted Ezel were now blowing his phone up. He could barely empty his voice messages before they were full again.
Scientists, biologists, zoologists, paleontologists, anthropologists, and all other types of ologists flew in from all over the globe to collaborate and try to make sense of the mythical-like creatures. The top scientists from each of the aforementioned fields traveled to Africa to get to the bottom of the mystery mutants.
After months and months of examining the animals in their African habitat, no one has yet to observe any cross-mating taking place and begin getting suspicious about the origins of the animals. African scientists at the only local scientific college lab in the area are being secretly investigated by the other scientists and still nothing has been uncovered or discovered. Some of the American scientists then come up with an idea and try a new avenue. They have a few top science students from prestigious universities apply for the African College as international students with the underlying intent of finding out any information on Dr. Sycamore and his college laboratory that he practically lives in, under the guise of wanting to broaden their scientific studies in the natural African habitat under his tutelage. Several months have passed, and the mutants in the Zoological Museum in the States have caused more breaking news. They have grown exponentially. The hormonal imbalance of the mutants are taking effect. They are becoming abnormally large and appear to have signs of rabies. The mutants have gone mad and have broken through the thick glass enclosures amongst hundreds of visitors, attacking everyone and everything in their path.
They escape through the doors and windows of the museum and eventually have to be put down in the middle of the street surrounding the museum after millions of dollars in property damage, lives being lost, and people being injured during the wild never-seen-before stampede.
Police, coroners, ambulances, and wildlife commissioners are all available to take control of the situation. News crews and helicopters were also on the scene filming and reporting the calamity. Meanwhile, back in Africa at the college lab, there has been a lead.
One of the U.S. students noticed Dr. Sycamore leaving a secret door with a digital coded lock as the student went to obtain an extra beaker after his fell to the floor and shattered as he was working late in the lab.
After Dr. Sycamore left for the evening, not knowing the student was there hiding after hours, he stealthily awaited under one of the stations until he hears the professor pull out of the small, rocky parking lot and goes immediately to the secret door that is staged as a gigantic wall picture filled with colorful glow-in-the-dark science illustrations of beakers, test tubes, DNA strands, flasks, funnels, microscopes, and chemical splash goggles.
He quietly calls and informed the other two students that night that he was still inside and would install the hidden camera they were waiting for the opportunity to install to capture whatever they could find to get to the bottom of what was going on. He used the micro-sized cameras to sit at an angle where he could see Dr. Sycamore enter the alarm code to the entrance door of the lab and the secret picture door. The students came into the cottage lab the following morning and played it cool for several days until they were able to capture the entry code to the secret door, which Dr. Sycamore never entered while they were present in order to keep its existence confidential. Zach had to spend the night inside to not set off the alarm by leaving, but Dr. Sycamore did not notice he never went home.
He thought they all left since they all said their goodbyes. After capturing and reviewing the footage, they learned the codes and returned to the lab in the middle of the night to secretly enter.
As the students quietly enter the disguised door, they are amazed at what they have discovered.
There are anesthetized monkeys, zebras, snakes, rats, and aardvarks.
They look around the locked room and find a manuscript on how to strategically withdraw DNA and insert it into another animal to crossbreed and create the mystery mutants. The students also find baby mutants being artificially nursed by machinery.
They are large enough to be let into the jungle.
They open another door inside the secret room that they almost missed since it looked like part of the wall, until one of the students heard an eerie noise coming from that direction. As they slowly crack open the heavy door, they find a small dark area full of haggardly-looking African teen girls staring quietly and fearfully back at them.
Half of them were impregnated, and the others were due to be inseminated with the various male animal sperm, endure a period of gestation and deliver the final project that Dr. Sycamore has been working on for years to figure out how to create after practicing with the existing animal mutants. He broke the genetic code he had named on the top of his manuscript, which was indeed his ultimate project, the Book of Genetic Engineering.
The American students freed the African girls who spoke a dialect they did not understand and called authorities who came to the rescue and gave the teen girls immediate medical attention.
Each adolescent female was permanently branded with a letter on her belly, which was discovered during their medical examinations. The teens each had one of the following letters on their abdomen: A, S, A, L, M, R, E, or G, each letter beginning with the letter of every sample confiscated from the lab that turned out to be matching DNA of the seminal fluid from each animal: alligator, snake, aardvark, lion, monkey, rat, elephant, and gazelle.
Dr. Sycamore had a rough draft documenting the entire procedure from beginning to end of the process to transfer the semen into the teens' eggs from the animals for in vitro fertilization and the secret component he used to ensure its success.
Additionally, the final chapter of the documents detailed the beginning stages of how to attempt to mutate and merge an infant human with each jungle animal, as well as a list of the names and addresses of expecting African females and their due dates, which it was discovered he was preparing to genetically engineer the newborns once they were delivered.
The highly regarded reputable science professor was then confronted, arrested at his home during the middle of the night, and has been now deemed by the townspeople as the mad scientist, and the science community labeled him the biohacker.
The anesthetized animals were eventually liberated and led back into their habitats. The college lab was completely destroyed by the natives, who were furious and disgusted with the plans to kidnap, begin mutating expecting infants, as well as with the kidnapped teens who were being held hostage to impregnate, and who were already pregnant after being inseminated with animal semen.
The semi-animal fetuses some of the teenage girls were impregnated with were all aborted. Prior to terminating the pregnancies, evidence was gathered in the form of ultrasounds, which showed 3D images of a combination of human and animal body parts developing. The aborted, part human and part animal fetuses were also jarred and preserved in formaldehyde for research. However, the assisting scientist and doctor did not reveal to anyone that was done.
After Dr. Sycamore was detained, the images were leaked and released. The townspeople went haywire. He was assassinated and never made it to court to stand trial.
His parents finally broke their silence and spoke out after being threatened and having to move from the village. They gave an account on how, as a child, their son grew up as the intellectual oddball of the family who excelled in his studies, especially in the sciences, and how he took a special liking to his animal toys as a young boy. How he would play with his plastic and rubber toy animals by switching their body parts and lining them up perfectly on his dresser, which also had various paraphernalia that he created from miscellaneous objects around the house to look like a makeshift science laboratory workstation. His mother detailed how she would snap the animals' body parts back to the animal they actually belonged to after he had snapped them off and put them on the incorrect animals, initially thinking maybe her son was just having fun for the moment and forgot to put them back.
but she would find them all put back exactly how he had them prior to her fixing them as soon as he noticed the change. Although it annoyed her, she just let him have fun with them how he wanted since she figured he was doing no harm by altering their body parts.
Dr. Sycamore's mother and father detailed how he had his rubber toy snake bodies crossed with rat tail ends that he used a safety pin to attach, monkeys with bird wings configured, elephant bodies with giraffe necks, frogs with lizard heads, lions with zebra stripes and aardvark with the heads of gazelles.
His mother described how as a youth, the doctor would use her nail polish to paint the lions with zebra stripes and use glue or tape for parts that did not stay snapped or pinned on. Mrs. Sycamore also describes how after cleaning under her son's bed one morning when he was at school, she found two of his sister's toy doll heads. One was attached to an alligator body and one to his toy cheetah's torso. A third doll was found in his closet, and the torso was attached to a giraffe's head and neck.
He had a fascination with altering nature. Dr. Sycamore was a maniacal monster in the making, and no one ever noticed or gave it a second thought until it was too late.
Words of wisdom. Wisdom is wonderful, but can be used in wicked ways.